So this is my week 7 review on the two stories we read for this week. We read Trifles by Susan Glaspell and The Man Who Almost Became a Man by Richard Wright. The main characters in both of these stories, I believe, are oppressed, and they're both seeking to gain power over their oppressors. Um, Both of the stories also contain secondary characters that are sympathetic to the main characters, and they try to help them. In Trifles, Miss Peters and Miss Hale discover the evidence that would have led to the conviction of Miss Wright, so they hide the evidence. And in The Man Who Was Almost a Man, Dave's mother does not. She doesn't tell the farm owner initially about the gun that Dave purchased. She's kind of trying to protect him, I think, because that's her son. In both the stories, white men are depicted as powerful beings, and then the African American and women are seen as much weaker, and that kind of like they're being taught the correct ways to behave. Um, so the first story, Trifles by Susan Glaspell. Um, Miss Wright is a woman who is abused in her marriage. She doesn't like her marriage, and then on top of that, her husband strangles her pet bird, and I think he does this just trying to show his power over her, whatever it is. But Miss Wright retaliates and kills him. Um, Susan Glaspell was a newspaper writer and wrote about a case in which a woman, Miss Hosick, killed her husband and was convicted because her neighbors were the ones that gave the police enough evidence to convict her. I think in this story she was trying to regain some dignity from Miss Hosick because she was basically convicted because she talked about how unhappy she was in her marriage, so that kind of gave her a motive. And it was also discovered she had a child out of wedlock. In Trifles, the woman who protected Miss Wright, they were aware of how unhappy Miss Wright was. You know, they were friends with her, so Miss Wright knew, or they knew about Miss Wright in the relationship, and so they kind of empathized and wanted to protect her because they understood why she committed the crime. You know, she was unhappy, and they found the bird. So, that was like that. The Man Who Almost Became a Man, Dave, the main character, is a 17-year-old African-American boy who works in the field, and he wants to purchase a gun because he thinks it'll give him power. He'll show everybody else that makes fun of him and bothers him and all of that stuff. You know, he's going to prove if he has a gun, he's a man now. But instead, he actually ends up proving the opposite. He proves he's not a man, you know, because he can't be courageous. He runs away when things get tough, and you know he doesn't want to own up to his mistake. I agree with Chris that the mule and Dave are similar. I think they're similar in several ways. Both are bound by lands. They're both controlled by Mr. Hawkins, and they're punished when they don't do the right thing or when they disobey. I also think that the author is making a statement about his own father, since his own dad ran away, and the family, like from the family and everything. So, you know, he wants to say that his own dad was weak and not a man, possibly. That's just one thing you could dive into and think about. I believe modernism is reflected in both of these stories because they still depict small town values, such as work ethic, duty, respectability, all of that stuff, social conformity. Some writers during this time wanted to include popular culture, but others, like Glaspell and Wright, they felt it was cynical, kind of. So I think Chris asked, what did Chris? He asked, what did it take to be a man during the time period of this story, and what does it take to be a man today? I think that back in the early 20th century, men were expected to provide for their families. If a man provided for their family, you know, they were a man. They went out, they earned the money, and then they came home to their cooked meals and everything. I think to be a man today, it's more of a complex thing. You know, you're going out and you're providing. Your wife's providing today, though, too. But on top of providing, like you used to back in the 20th century, now husbands, fathers, they're providing. Then they're coming home and they're also, you know, sharing responsibilities of the chores, sharing responsibility with the children, getting them places, you know, whatever they have to do. Um, you know, gender roles are kind of a confusing thing now because they're more complicated. You know, everybody sees that everybody should be treated equally and fairly. So, you also, men nowadays have to, they have to give their wives the opportunity to pursue their interests and, you know, all of that stuff. So I think it's just more complex now than it was back in the day. I think back in the day it was more simple, you know, just provide for your family. um So it seems today that, you know, women might have the best of both worlds because they can pursue a career and they can get a job and all of that stuff. So, you know, everything is equal now.